Hi, it's Mo. It's a few days after my last 2022 book haul revisit, but you will be seeing this much later. I mention it only because the book haul revisit from 2022 that we're doing today is the sequel, the part 2 of the last video. So if you want to see all the books that I bought in 2022 and whether I've read them 2 years later, go look at that video. If you want to see all the books that I found in April of 2022, you can watch this video and see how many of these books I have read. So this was one of the biggest book hauls that we've done so far, and if you're new to this series, we are looking back at 2022, which is the first year that I started my RAB spreadsheet, which is recently acquired books spreadsheet, categorizing, listing all the books that I brought in the year of 2022. So I had been on BookTube 2 years by then, and I was collecting a lot of books, I was finding a lot of books that I wanted to, I was seeking out books, I was going to a lot of book sales, and I was a little overzealous with getting books. So this year I wanted to look back and see how many of those books I've actually read. Like I said, we've done January through April so far, and April was a big one with 60 books. The first video had 30 books in it, and this second video I think probably has about the same, maybe more even. And we're going to look at it and see how many of the books from April that I found I have already read 2 years later. While we're looking at these videos, we're seeing what I read, what I haven't read, what might have gone on like collections, so something that I might read at some point but is just in a collection for now. We're also looking at books that have gone back down into the basement, books that I've unhauled either with reading or without reading. We're also looking at books that went on my reference shelf. So these might be books that are already read, unread, on reference shelf, in collections, lots of different various places that these books might have ended up. But primarily I want to see the read to unread ratio. I also am trying to make a priority reading list, so I have a few books from each video that I think would be books that are important to read and kind of use as a TBR of sorts. I'm not sure if that priority TBR is going to be like an end of year TBR or if it's going to be a TBR for next year. We will see. Let's get started looking at this video. So most of these videos have like a little free library content in the beginning of the video, and the last one didn't. So I'm interested to see if this one does. And this one does. My introduction is just about how I acquired a lot of books. So I first talk about some books that my dad gave me. He often gives me boxes of books that he's getting rid of. Lately they've been mostly vintage sci-fi, but I talk about how in 2022 he gave me a box and some of them went on my TBR shelf. The first of which is Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. I have not read Vineland by Thomas Pynchon, but I did put that back down in my basement. It is not currently on my shelves. I've wanted to read more Thomas Pynchon since reading The Crying of Lot 49, which I recently reread at the end of last year and still really enjoyed, but haven't gotten to it yet. The next books are a trilogy. It is the Day World trilogy, so my dad gave me all three in beautiful hardcover. They are a sci-fi series by Philip Jose Farmer, and I have read one of them, which was Day World, before making this video, but we're going to count it as read for this video. And then I did read the second one last year, I think. So it is time to read the third one. So that means out of those three, we have two read and one unread. I'm going to put that last book on my priority reading list. I should get to that one soon. The next book is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I found this in a little free library near my house, and I have read that one. It's one of the few books off the Women Prize, or out of the Women Prize winners I've ever read, and it was the second Tayari Jones I read. I also read a short story by her. I loved both of those stories by her, the short story and the book, and I am looking forward to reading more. I think I have one more Tayari Jones on my TBR. The next book is unread. That is The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald. This is a super short, well-loved, I think acclaimed. I know Penelope Fitzgerald has been on the Booker Prize before, and there's really no excuse for me not reading this except that it is like really tiny print. So it's very short. I think it's under 200 pages, but it's super tiny print. So it's a little bit longer than that. I should see if that one is on Hoopla or Libby and see if I can get it from the library, read it it on audio. Another unread book is The Stationery Shop by Marjane Hamali. This is actually on my TBR spin list for this year, so hopefully I will be getting to it over the next however many months until December. This is one that's supposedly like very excellent but a little bit heavy, which is one of the reasons that I haven't gotten to it yet. The next 3 books I can see are all unread. It's really skewing our read to unread right now. It is The Velvet Rage, which is a nonfiction. This is a queer nonfiction that I recently saw is on Libby, so maybe that's one that I need to check out. And then we have Michael Tolliver Lives, which is in the Tales of the City books. I'm reading those in order and I just haven't gotten to that yet. And then I also see The Borrowers Afloat by Mary Norton. So this one is a middle grade book about the borrowers, and it is also one that I'm reading in order, and I haven't found the second book in the series yet, so I can't get to The Borrowers Afloat yet. But these are all still on my TBR. The next book is also unread. That's Appleseed by Matt Bell. I don't know what this one is about. I say I don't know what it's about in the video, and I still don't know what it's about. I know that it's like cli-fi, and I think I saw Bob the Booker talk about this one a long time ago, and I was really interested in it. I'm still really interested in it. This is one that I actually look at a lot and think about reading a lot, but I haven't read it. These are all good options to look up on audiobook. The next book is also unread. That is Winter Counts by David Heska Wanabe Wyden. This is an indigenous crime thriller, and it's one that I really wanted to read a few years ago, and I could not find the audio for it. This was before I rejoined the library and found out about Libby and Hoopla, so now I can probably get this one on audio, but I just haven't wanted to because I've heard that it's very heavy and there's a lot of violence, sexual violence, and I believe some animal violence. So this is one that I think about a lot as well, but I just have not picked up. Ooh, also unread is Memory Wall by Anthony Doerr. This is a short story collection. I've never read Anthony Doerr. I've never really been that interested in him, but I liked the cover that has fossils on it, and also I thought like short stories might be a good place to jump in, but I just don't read short stories that much, so I have not picked this one up. I found most of these in little free libraries. The next book I distinctly remember finding, and that is South Africa Without Apartheid, and it is a nonfiction, like academic text. I think this one went down in the basement, so I'm going to mark it as a basement book. It's one that I'm interested in. I know it's going to be quite dated, but I think it would be a good read, at least in juxtaposition to some fiction that I have about South Africa. The next book is also a nonfiction, and it is also unread. It is Hidden History of Maritime New Jersey. I found this in Red Bank, and I do still want to read this one. It's very short, and it's like kind of one of those like local history books that you see at Barnes and Noble's. You know, they have like the sepia toned covers. I've read a couple of those and I do like them. This one I think is a little bit more academic, a little bit more in depth, but I think it would be super fun to read. It's just a book that I have to be like really, really in the mood for. The next book is The Palace of the Drowned by Christine Magnin. I have not read this one, but I have unhauled it. So I actually had this on an end of year TBR at one point, and it was one that I had wanted to read, and then I was going back and forth, so I decided to just try a chapter with it. When I tried the chapter, it was one of the more intriguing books. I'll try to list that try a chapter down below, but it wasn't intriguing enough, and I decided to unhaul it. So that's our first unhaul, and it was unread and unhauled. The next book goes on collections. It is Palm Sunday by Kurt Vonnegut. Now that's not to say I would not actually read this book. I would like to. I've read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut, but not all of his work. Palm Sunday is not high on my list. Like I said, it's not on my TBR, it is on collections, and these videos really are about what's on my TBR. Next is Robert A. Heinlein, The Rolling Stones. This one I know I recently put down in the basement, or maybe not that recently, but it feels recently. I have read one Robert Heinlein book, and I definitely want to read more of his stuff, but I've been collecting it and I've been getting them in boxes from my dad, so I really have a lot to choose from and I don't need them all up on my TBR. The next one is Tunnel in the Sky, same story with the last. Another book in this little sci-fi pocket is Grumbles from the Grave. This was a posthumously published memoir by Robert A. Heinlein. I definitely would be eager to check that out, but it is in the basement. Another vintage sci-fi, another down in the basement is Off Center by Damon Knight. I haven't ever read any Damon Knight, but there's a couple of his that I'm interested in. Wind in the Willows is still on my TBR. It is unread, so we have done really poorly so far in this video. We're way behind on reading books. I was hoping that this video would be a contrast to the other video and I would have read a bunch of these. So it's like the books that I buy I don't read, but the books that I find I do read. That's not the case. The next book is read, and that is Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. I read this book this year. Where is it? Yeah, oh, there it is. It's got a blue spine. I read this book this year. This is actually my first Louise Erdrich, and it is a pandemic novel. I really enjoyed it. It is quite heavy. It's not about the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is about a pandemic, and it has a lot of similarities. So if you are not interested in that, I would try something else by her, but she is a great writer, and I'm looking forward to reading more of her work. The next book is unread, but is still on my TBR. It is Under the Jaguar Sun by Italo Calvino. This is a collection of short stories, I think, but they're like very short and they might be interconnected. I recently did read another Italo Calvino, so I have read Baron in the Trees and Invisible Cities, and I really love both of those, so I'm happy that I have a couple more Calvinos on my TBR. Maybe Under the Jaguar Sun should be on my priority list because it is very short and I am liking his work and I am in the mood for his work, but I don't necessarily want to read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler because that one's quite long. The next book that I picked up in 2022, I have also unhauled. Wait, did I actually unhaul it? Yes. I did read it, but I DNF'd it. Should it go in unhaul or should it go in DNF? I think it should go in unhaul. And that is Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. I really wanted to like this because Nicole Dennis Benn is a Caribbean author and this is a queer book with a lesbian main character, and I tried several times to get into this book and I got about halfway through, but it just was not holding my attention. It seemed like the plot was only going to be sad. It's about a lesbian and her younger sister who live in Jamaica, and the lesbian works at a hotel. She's trying to work her way up through the ranks, becoming manager, etc. And she's also sleeping with her boss to try to move up the ranks, which is all horrible and negative. Like it's not like in a positive, like happy way. It's like in a bad way. And then her girlfriend is this kind of reclusive lesbian who returned to the area, and she has to hide that they're together, which is like, that was hard. And then the story of her little sister is all about how she doesn't like how dark her skin is, so she's trying to lighten her skin, and it's just like all headed for disaster, or at least it was at the point where I stopped reading, and I really just couldn't face reading more of that, unfortunately. The next book I have read, and that is Devolution by Max Brooks. This one was really good. I actually read it on audio, even though I have a physical copy. It was fun because like Nathan Fillion was one of the readers, and it was like multicast, which I usually don't like, but I think it worked well for this book because this book is an epistolary novel told all in diary entries and interviews. It's fun. That's a fun one. I really enjoyed that one. It's no longer on my shelves. I did unhaul that one just because I don't need to keep it. But I would recommend, especially if you like monster stories. If you were doing Giant April recently, that would be a good one if you plan to participate next year. The next book is unread, still in my TBR. It is Sir Godwin and the Green Knight by Anonymous. And I think this is like a medieval classic epic poem type story, but it's very short and it seems, I don't know, interesting. I have it as like a Penguin classic and the cover makes it look really fun and cool. Who knows if that's true. I do still want to read this one, but as of now it is unread. In the same little free library, another unread book is How to Hide an Empire by Daniel Immerwahr. I've heard good things about this nonfiction, and it's kind of how America, although originally a colonized country is like now the colonizer is now the empire. And I think like particularly in light of what's going on in Palestine and what's going on with Israel, this would be a really good read, really interesting and informative, but also very heavy and intense. So I have not read this one yet. The next book is unread and still on my TBR. It is Dancer from the Dance by Andrew Hollerman. This is a gay classic and one that I definitely really want to read. It is also very heavy though, and like I have a tough time reading like heavy or dark or unhappy gay books just because that's the majority of gay books, and I would rather read happy, fun, good gay love stories or good gay histories or good gay fictions. So it is tough for me to read some of these, but this is one that I really do want to get to. It's like renowned in the queer community, so I'm super pumped to get to it, but it is unread. The next book is also unread. It is The Last Picture Show by Larry McMurtry. I've heard only good things about Larry McMurtry's work, and this one seems really interesting. I know it was made into a very famous movie in like the 70s. I don't know what it's about other than it's like about a group of kids in a small town, but I am still really interested in that one. Unfortunately, I have not gotten to it yet, and unfortunately it means that we are far, far past the time that I could ever come back to like winning this video and reading more than I have unread. So we'll see what the last few books bring us, but it doesn't look good. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. The next book is The Axeman by Ray Celestine. I have read this book. It's also called The Axeman's Jazz sometimes, and it's part of the Music City Quartet. I read this a few years ago because it's about New Orleans. I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it, so I have not seeked out the other in this series, and I probably never will. If they come across my path, I might read them. This one was okay. I did like the New Orleans setting. I thought that was really good, but the story itself was like eh, and it was like 500 pages, which is unnecessary. Next, we have 2 copies of the same book, both really great vintage copies, both of which I kept, both of which have gone on to my collections, but both of which are unread. So I'm counting this as one book because it's the same book, and that is In Dubious Battle by John Steinbeck. I love John Steinbeck, and I've read a few of his books, not the most famous ones, but I always collect his vintage books when I see them because I will eventually probably work my way through all of them. Maybe not the most famous books, maybe not all of them, but I did get 2 copies in 1 month of the same book. Very exciting. They're on my collections. Next, we have another book that I have read, that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This made my best covers of the year that I read it. I adore this cover. I think it's so beautiful. It is a over-the-top banana pants thriller, which is also my favorite kind of thriller. I really like this one and happy to have read it. I was so excited when I found it. I was like over the moon that I found this in a little free library. That was the last book, and 60 books is too many books to acquire in a month, for sure. So that was another 30 books in that video. Like I said, go back to the other video and watch for the previous 30. I only read 7 out of those 30. Not a good track record, but I did unhaul 2, and one of those was a DNF. I put 3 on my collections, 4 if you count that duplicate. 7 also went down to the basement, but 16 are still on my TBR and still unread. So that might be the worst video that we've had yet. That might be the worst revisit. I'm interested to see what the rest of the year brings. I think for priority reads, we're going to put Day World Breakup and also Under the Jaguar Sun. So let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here. Let me know if you think I should prioritize any of them. Any should go on my priority list, or if you think get rid of it, you don't need to read it. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.